This lecture by Dr. Bev Knox is entitled Sex, the Brain, and the Sexual Response Cycle. In other words, how your body reacts during sexual pleasure. According to Lucan Fox in 2024, the scientific study of sex has remained taboo until relatively recently. In fact, the study of sexual anatomy, physiology, and behavior wasn't formally undertaken until the late 19th century, and only began to be taken seriously as recently as the 1950s. Notably, William Masters and Virginia Johnson formed a research team in 1957 that expanded studies of sexuality from merely asking people about their sex lives to measuring people's anatomy and physiology while they were actually having sex. Masters and Johnson used primarily plethysmography, which is the measuring of changes in blood or airflow to organs, to determine sexual responses in a wide range of body parts, such as in breasts, skin, various muscle structures, bladder, rectum, external sex organs, and lungs, as well as measurements of people's pulse and blood pressure. They measured more than 10,000 orgasms in 700 individuals between 18 to 89 years of age during sex with partners or alone. Masters and Johnson's findings were initially published in two best-selling books, Human Sexual Response in 1966 and Human Sexual Inadequacy in 1970. Their initial experimental techniques and data form the basis of our contemporary understanding of sexual anatomy and physiology. When it comes to the anatomy of pleasure, sexual anatomy is typically discussed only in terms of reproduction. However, reproduction is only a small part of what drives us sexually. Lucan Fox, 2018. Full discussions of sexual anatomy also include the concept of pleasure. Now let us review the main topic of this lecture, sex on the brain. According to the Medical Institute of Sexual Health, modern neuroscience research has uncovered startling new information about how sex affects our brains. The effect of sex on our brains can have all sorts of consequences, including many that scientists are still working to understand. But we do know that sex can literally change a person's brain, influencing the thought process and affecting future decisions. When sex is experienced in unhealthy ways, at the wrong time, it can damage vital aspects of who we are as human beings. Chemicals in the brain, such as dopamine, oxytocin, and vasopressin, help guide human behavior. First, let us review what dopamine is and does. Dopamine makes a person feel good after an exciting experience. It has a great influence over human behavior, since it also gives us the desire or need to repeat the behavior that caused us such a good sensation. Sex is one of the strongest generators of dopamine reward. However, dopamine cannot distinguish between beneficial and harmful sexual behavior. Next, oxytocin is critically important to bonding and trust, especially in women. Oxytocin, much like dopamine, occurs during an intimate physical relationship and cannot distinguish between right and wrong. Oxytocin is released regardless of who the sexual partner is. That bond or trust explains why it can be so painful emotionally when sexually active people break up. It also helps explain why some women are unable or unwilling to get out of a bad or abusive relationship. Next, vasopressin initiates the bonding in the brain in males. Like oxytocin, it occurs during an intimate physical relationship and cannot distinguish between right and wrong. We cannot separate the brain from the body. What our body does has a dramatic impact on our brain, and what we think in our brain will have a dramatic impact on our body and how we use it. Now, here's some important facts to think about. First, regarding the adolescent. The adolescent body may be capable of having sex, but the adolescent mind may not be prepared to think through and handle all the consequences. In contrast to pregnancy and STIs, the emotional and psychological impact cannot be guarded against with condoms and other forms of contraception. A 2017 survey of high school adolescents illustrates that both boys and girls who have had sex are more likely to be depressed than their friends who have not had sex. That survey also showed that students who had not had sexual activity consistently had a lower percentage of suicidal thoughts than their more sexually active classmates. And next, in regards to pornography. Pornography certainly adversely affects the brain in both adolescents and adults alike. Studies have found that frequency of pornography consumption correlates with an increase in depression, anxiety, stress, and social problems. According to research, Even moderate pornography consumption is correlated with shrunken gray matter in parts of the brain that oversee cognitive function. Pornography often shows vulgarity, physical aggression, and even rape and incest. Watching such extreme pornography may cause some people to learn from porn and treat partners more aggressively. Now, continuing our lecture of sex and the brain. At first glance, or touch for that matter, the clitoris and penis are the parts of our anatomies that seem to bring the most pleasure. However, these two organs pale in comparison to our central nervous system's capacity for pleasure. According to Lucan and Fox, 2024, extensive regions of the brain and brainstem are activated when a person experiences pleasure. This includes the insula, temporal cortex, limbic system, nucleus accumbens, basal ganglia, superior parietal cortex, dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, and the cerebellum. Neuroimaging techniques show that these regions of the brain are active when patients have spontaneous orgasms involving no direct stimulation of the skin, and when experimental participants self-stimulate erogenous zones. Erogenous zones are sensitive areas of skin that are connected, via the nervous system, to the somatosensory cortex in the brain. The somatosensory cortex is the part of the brain primarily responsible for processing sensory information from the skin. The more sensitive an area of your skin is, for example, your lips, the larger the corresponding area of the somatosensory will be. The less sensitive an area of your skin is, the smaller the corresponding area of the somatosensory will be. When a sensitive area of a person's body is touched, it is typically interpreted by the brain in one of three ways: that tickles, that hurts, or that you need to do again. Thus, the more sensitive areas of our bodies have greater potential to evoke pleasure. Lastly, let us review the sexual response cycle. According to Masters and Johnson, the brain and other sex organs respond to sexual stimuli in a universal fashion known as the sexual response cycle. The sexual response cycle is composed of 4 phases: excitement, plateau, orgasm, and resolution. First is the excitement phase. Activation of the sympathetic branch of the autonomic nervous system defines the excitement phase. It is when the heart rate and breathing accelerates, along with increased blood flow to the penis, vaginal walls, clitoris, and nipples. Involuntary muscular movements, known as myotonia, such as facial grimaces, also occur during this phase. Second, plateau. Blood flow, heart rate, and breathing intensify during the plateau phase. During this phase, often referred to as foreplay, females experience an orgasmic platform where the outer third of the vaginal walls tightening, and males experience a release of preseminal fluid containing healthy sperm cells. Third is the orgasm phase. The shortest but most pleasurable phase is the orgasm phase. After reaching its climax, neuromuscular tension is released and the hormone oxytocin floods the bloodstream, facilitating emotional bonding. Although the rhythmic muscular contractions of an orgasm are temporally associated with ejaculation, this association is not necessary because orgasm and ejaculation are 2 separate physiological processes. And fourth, it is the resolution phase. This is when the body returns to a pre-aroused state. Males enter a refractory period of being unresponsive to sexual stimuli. The length of this period depends on age, frequency of recent sexual relations, level of intimacy with a partner, and novelty. Because females do not have a refractory period, they have a greater potential physiologically of having multiple orgasms. Again, what we know from science is that the brain is the largest and most important sex organ. Chemicals in the brain, such as dopamine, oxytocin, and vasopressin, help guide human behavior. Please be advised, this is an educational, academically sound psychology course by Dr. Bev Knox for adult student learners. Lecture content include discussions and representations of human sexuality, theoretical perspectives on sexuality, sex research, sexual anatomy, sex hormones, sexual arousal, attraction and love theories, gender and sexuality, sexual orientation, variations in sexual behavior, sexual coercion, sex for sale, sexual disorders, and sex therapy, ethics and religion on sexuality, and sex laws. Before beginning the course, please be mindful of your capacity to witness and respond to videos, books, and images of this content material.